I'm Wilson Lai.
I'm Benjamin Yap.
I'm Eli Sands.
I'm the Isaac Chung.
And you're listening to Deep Cut.
On Deep Cut, we compare a director's most popular film with a personal favorite chosen by one of us.
We also discuss that director's life and career to bring in context that helps us view their movies as they may want us to.
If you're enjoying the show, please rate and subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts to help others discover the show. Better still, leave a review on Apple Podcasts or comment on episodes directly on Spotify. You can also find us at deepcutpod.com to find links to our socials, Discord, and Patreon.
Today, listeners, you are joining us for a very special episode of the podcast because director Lee Isaac Chung is here with us on Deep Cut. Isaac is an acclaimed American filmmaker who has made 5 feature films, including the critically acclaimed and award-winning Minari in 2020 and last year's blockbuster hit Twisters. We are so lucky to have him on Deep Cut today. Welcome to the podcast, Isaac.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, honored to be here. Glad to chat. I gotta give you a warning that I didn't prep in any way for this. This is all off the cuff.
That's how we do it here.
All right, cool.
Yo, in good company.
How we roll. So for today's episode, we asked you what a deep cut pick movie would be for you, and you picked a few Steven Spielberg films. So this is the first time that we're doing Steven Spielberg. So I'll do the briefest of brief director intros. He was born on December 1946 and is one of the most well-known directors in the whole world. Hard to separate Steven Spielberg from this idea of the Hollywood blockbuster. And Spielberg has directed 34 feature films over his career. That's it. That's my director bio. I wanted to...
I mean, he pretty much invented the blockbuster. I don't know if that's the right word, but he kind of made it.
Yeah, it's him.
I've been to his website or the Amblin website where I looked up his bio once, and it was kind of funny to read it because normally filmmakers have a bio and it's interesting to read those, but for his, it's basically like, yeah, he invented cinema.
Spielberg, yeah, that's me. That's kind of it.
One of the reasons why I chose him as well is when I was in film school. When I came out to LA on a family trip, like one of the first things I did was I went to the Kodak Theater. It was my first time in LA. And I saw Steven Spielberg's handprints in the concrete. And like I put my hands into the prints. And I remember, just thinking about, wow, he's a human. And there's just something about that he's always been really huge for me. The very first film I ever saw in the cinema was E.T. And then AI is one of my favorite movies of all time. And then I got to work with him on Twister. So there was this nice arc to my own work where I just felt like a dream was coming true.
I feel like Spielberg was probably a big part of all 3 of our childhoods as well. Like, I think one of the first films that I really latched onto was Jurassic Park as a really young kid. And just his ability to build that sort of feeling of awe when watching a movie, I think it's just a hard thing to do. And he consistently does that feature after feature. But yeah, excited to get into AI. I was wondering, Ben and Eli, what are your thoughts and connections to Steven Spielberg?
For me, I came to cinema as like a cinephile so late because my family isn't like a family that really watches movies. And even so, it's like you can't avoid Spielberg because they would play them on the local television with ads and everything, right? And I might not have seen a lot of these movies, but I've seen at least like maybe 30 minutes to an hour of many of his movies, like just chunks. I've seen so many teasers for War of the Worlds and yet have not seen it. I've seen many ads for it.
It's good.
I've not seen it. Yeah.
Have you watched Jacob Geller's video essay about it?
No, I've not.
It's a good video essay. I also have not seen it.
I think it's like, no matter where you are, you can't avoid Spielberg. Like literally when I say where you are, I mean like in the earth. It's like he will find his way to you in some form. I think it's quite undeniable that he has essentially a global impact as a filmmaker, which is, he's like one of, I don't know how many people that has that. Or maybe he's a one-off. I don't know. The only other person I can think of is like James Cameron.
Yeah, that's very true. Cameron's definitely up there for sure. Someone who everybody's seen their work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But Spielberg's really good because you start off with like E.T. and Jaws, and you kind of see him as a younger filmmaker, and then you kind of watch him grow up, and you have the era of Jurassic Park and Schindler's List, and then the early 2000s is like AI, Minority Report, Catch Me If You Can. I think he's in his 40s by that point. And then after that, he goes into like the civics lessons where he's doing like Lincoln. Yes. So you just kind of see him growing in his different things that he's exploring.
After he conquered the cinema, he's trying to get into the classrooms.
I'm sure teachers love it because they can just put on the movie.
Yeah.
With Fabelmans, I was thinking like that's now his older era where he's reflecting back. The musical as well, West Side Story, is a film that he loved as a kid. So you see him kind of looking backwards. But I'm curious about this new Alien movie that he's doing. I've only heard a little bit about it, but it's very secretive.
I'm hearing about this for the first time.
Really?
Yeah.
It's just filming in New Jersey recently.
Yeah, I have a friend that's on the hair and makeup team for that movie. So she's been like feeding me, drip feeding me.
No way.
Like, Josh O'Connor came in today. And I was like, ah!
That's cool.
Yeah, very excited for it to come out. Eli, what is your relationship with Steven Spielberg?
Yeah, I think early on, before I was really curious about movie making, I loved Steven Spielberg's movies. And in particular, the first Indiana Jones movie was a big point of entertainment and fascination and bonding between me and my brother. And also the kind of movie that I could really interact with because of Lego. I was a big Lego kid. And those Lego Indiana Jones sets gave me like a feeling of not just entertainment and receiving joy and pleasure from a movie, but also being able to interact with it and take some ownership over it as a story. I think certainly planted some seeds for how I engage with movies. And also I think about him as a very publicly Jewish person, for someone who grew up in a small town as one of the only Jews, and eventually as a historian or someone who is interested in history and like thinks about how do you frame it in a way that is accessible while still being accurate and nuanced. And I'll openly admit that I have major gripes with things like Schindler's List and Lincoln, even as they're both movies that I admire on certain levels. But he is always someone who is compelling to watch for me, is entertaining, and engages me on a lot of different emotional and intellectual levels. He's undeniably a great, great artist.
And we're so lucky to have him continue to be making movies in this day and age. Like I feel like he's like survived so many eras of like global filmmaking waves. And the fact that he's still like entering his late era right now is really cool. And like, just really can't wait to see what he has in store for us over the next few years.
Yeah, I hope he'll be like Eastwood and he's making films in his 90s,
Yeah.
Feels 100.
Please. So today, Isaac, you chose Spielberg's AI, and you were talking earlier about how this was in his 40s and he was adventuring into, I guess, like other forms of or modes of storytelling. And I wanted to ask, why specifically is AI like one of your favorite films of all time?
I remember I watched it around, I think I was graduating from college when it came out. I saw it with some friends. I remember being transfixed by it. I just found it to be an incredible film as I was watching it. And then after it was done, I remember all my friends were like, well, that wasn't very good. And then that was just, and then that was like the consensus for the night, where I was confused because I thought it was incredible. I remember putting that off. Like I just decided maybe I was wrong. That film isn't that great. And then I watched it again when I got to film school, and I just remember being astounded by it again. And there's something about it that maybe just hits a lot of buttons for me of things that I love. Like I love journey stories. I love stories of like a coming of age type of story. I like stories that deal with the idea of love. And I just like the sheer scope and scale of his vision within this film. Like he goes from a futuristic AI world with this boy and sets up this entire world. And then he jumps like thousands of years into the future when humanity is gone. And he has this crazy ending that I think is polarizing. I think a lot of people think that ending is not very satisfying. But I find it to be disturbing in the best possible way. Because it's like an ending in which, there's nobody left alive and it's a fantasy ending in a way. So all of those things, it makes me think a lot. Like I think a lot and I wrestle a lot as I watch it. And I think the filmmaking in it technically is really strong. And I speak from someone, I'm not saying that I'm an authority on this, but as someone who's been on set and has designed shots and things like that, sometimes I just go back and watch the film just to get ideas for shot design and blocking and things like that. I got to say that it's just next level blocking, the way that he's telling the story. And I don't know how he does it. I've heard him say that he comes up with it on the day when he's filming. And yeah, I just don't know how anyone can do that. So there's just so many things about it that I think artistically speaking, the film is very close to perfection from my point of view. So like that New York Times list, that came out recently. I don't know if you guys have talked about that. I might put that number one for me, like in the 2000s era. But I brought it up as a deep cut because I don't think people really revere that film to the level I think they should.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like it's still somehow underrated. And that's just me. I know that you guys might disagree as well. And I will stay on the podcast regardless and listen politely. But yeah, I believe the film is great.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I do think like out of Spielberg's oeuvre, I think this is probably one of the lesser seen of like the Spielberg features. And it's also like I think it's done at such a high quality as well. I remember seeing this when I was quite young, I think probably like 8 or 9, and being really scared by a lot of the sequences in this. And also just that idea, right? Like even though David is a robot, for so much of the film, he is communicated to us like as a young boy. And like as a young boy myself, like this idea of like your mother abandoning you, just leaving you out in the world to fend for yourself for like the rest of eternity was such a haunting thought to me that I just have very vivid memories of like watching that for the first time. And I haven't watched it since I was a kid. So rediscovering it now in preparation for this podcast, I was just really in awe with the level of filmmaking at hand here, but also just a very strong command of audience emotions that Spielberg is just such a genius at doing and does it so well, but also so seamlessly. And I would also love to talk about the blocking as we get like further into the podcast. But those are my general thoughts about AI. How about you two guys? I think this is both of your first times watching AI. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I resonate with what Isaac said about it being disturbing in a super compelling way. I think my overall take, which I teased in our chat before recording, is that this is a horror movie. But as we're talking, I'm thinking that it's like a grim fairy tale in the same way that a fairy tale can have this kind of dreamy tone and exist on an altered plane of reality, but then it comes back to kind of dig into your rib in a kind of uncomfortable way, like Bluebeard ending with all this murder, for example. Or if you really think about Red Riding Hood, a girl gets eaten by a wolf. And that ending, it really surprised me and caught me off guard. And it is both dreamy and really, really uncomfortable. Like to really sit with what that ending is and take it both literally and figuratively, it's so upsetting in a way that I really, really am drawn to and want to talk about together. What about you, Ben?
Oh, this is probably one of these classic, I just say out of pocket things, but I was trying to think of like what to say about the film because I watched it and I think I might have seen bits of it on television, but I never seen it all the way through. And I also always have this movie mixed up with Bicentennial Man, which I don't know anything about.
Oh my God, the Robin Williams one.
Yeah.
And Robin Williams is here too.
Is he?
Not in the recording right now, but he voices Dr. No.
Oh, okay.
The spirit of him is here. Yes.
I was brushing my teeth and thinking about the movie, and I was like, wow, you know what this movie really reminds me of? It reminds me of Toy Story.
Yeah.
But it also really makes sense because Toy Story feels like it's also kind of inspired by Pinocchio, and like all these films that are inspired by Pinocchio, so many of them, and then many films that are made literally adapting Pinocchio. And so I think there's that classical nature to the kind of story it is, and the fact that obviously the film itself also references Pinocchio and trying to become a real boy. But I think in the tone of the film, like I think especially in the middle with the misfit robots reminds me of like the misfit mutant toys in Toy Story. And I think I can understand why it's a polarizing film because usually Spielberg's making these family-friendly crowd pleasers. And he kind of is doing it in the middle here, but then it's sandwiched by two very bleak acts.
Yeah.
Right? This is not a smooth pill to swallow as a Spielberg film, like of any film. And I think that's why it is a very interesting film and a very good choice as a deep cut because I think Spielberg's number one quality as a filmmaker is he makes a very cohesive, easy to watch film. And that's why he makes a blockbuster, a film that 4 quadrants, right? But here it's like a film that's like, okay, the ones who like horror and crazy, philosophical, scary stuff and something fun, like these two don't usually go together. And I think that's why it's kind of an oddity in his filmography. It's a little strange.
I was thinking, Ben, that you often know sort of what feeling you're going to get coming out of a Spielberg movie in a way that can be great. You know, if the movie signs a contract with the audience, you know what you're getting. But here it just completely is inverted in a way that's so unusual for him.
And I think personally for me, like if I watch the movie and I don't really think about the fact that it's a Spielberg film, so I kind of go in with no expectations if I were able to, that first act sets up something that doesn't feel like a Spielberg film at all. And I think the second act feels the most like a Spielberg film. And I think that's the part that I'm like, this doesn't fit because it comes second rather than first. And so there's this, it feels a bit put together in a, like you put two halves that don't necessarily fit together. And I think that's an interesting exercise. And of course, that really also ties into the production history of the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a good chance to do a summary of the film and we talk a little bit about how this project came about for Spielberg.
Yes. Well, I'll do a very brief summary and a production context.
And while spoiling the film.
Yeah, sorry. If you haven't already been
Oh, shoot.
spoiled.
Yeah. What's your spoiler policy here?
Yeah, we usually just spoil as we go and then apologize for it afterwards.
People know coming into it, so it's okay.
Okay. Set in the future where rising sea levels have changed the world, humanity coexists with human-like robots called mechas. David, who is a prototype mecha child who is capable of experiencing love, is adopted by a couple whose biological son is in some sort of cryo sleep because of an illness. David is later abandoned because the couple's son returns. And inspired by the tale of Pinocchio, David embarks on a poignant quest to find the blue fairy and become a quote-unquote real boy, believing that this will win back his mother's love. So this project was first thought of by Stanley Kubrick in the 1970s. And he wanted to adapt this story called Super Toys Last All Summer Long and hired the story's author, Brian Aldiss, to write initial film treatment. And I think over the next couple of decades, this project was being produced by Kubrick, but I think directorial duties were sort of jumping between Stanley Kubrick himself and Steven Spielberg. And it was only until after Kubrick died in March 1999 that his widow approached Spielberg to finally take over as director. And Spielberg decided to say yes to this and decided to write the screenplay himself, which was his first solo screenplay since Close Encounters of the Third Kind in 1977. Although writing the script himself, it seems like the script was very faithful to the Kubrick original, specifically keeping Kubrick's intended ending for the film, which was so polarizing. And I think this sort of blend of Kubrick tendencies and Spielberg tendencies make this such a special film itself.
Are you guys Kubrick fans, by the way? On here, I'm just curious.
That's a good
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's all right. Question. It's a good question.
No, it's okay.
Are you? Before I answer.
I am. Yeah, I am a fan.
I really like some Kubrick films. Like, I think The Shining's one of the best movies of all time. Like, not underrated. 2001's probably one of the best movies of all time. But I feel like I just haven't really like connected with him as a filmmaker. Like, honestly, I just don't think I've seen the deep cuts. Like, I haven't seen Barry Lyndon yet. Like, I haven't seen Eyes Wide Shut. Like, these are like big Kubrick movies that I haven't seen, but I've seen like the hits and I really like them. So yeah, I would say I'm like a casual fan.
Lyndon is great. I think Barry Lyndon is a great one to like. That feels like canon. Like you have to see.
Yeah,
I definitely watched almost all of his films as like the early cinephile, because it's like you look through like the best directors list and you just kind of go through all of them. And I was like, okay, I need to watch all this Kubrick stuff. And I think back then, when my mind was still not fully formed in a way, it was just kind of like, okay, I'm absorbing this and I don't really know how to maybe like as a personal person and like an individual critically assess whether I like this. And as I grew older, I think I came to this position, which is like, I felt like he was such a cold filmmaker, whereas I prefer something more like rousing or like emotional. But then something really interesting happened, which is that recently there was a retrospective on some of Kubrick's films in Singapore, like this year. And so I went in and rewatched a few of them. I watched Barry Lyndon and A Clockwork Orange, and I think I only rewatched those two. What was really interesting was like, Barry Lyndon was like my favorite Kubrick film. And then this time I went in and I felt it was even colder than I remembered, which was strange because I would imagine that it was a film that wasn't cold because it's kind of like this period adventure in a weird way. And I don't know why it wasn't taking to me that well. Whereas like my impression of Clockwork Orange was something that was like, this is kind of problematic and like does he really handle it well? And I actually came out of Clockwork Orange feeling like it was better than I remembered, because I felt like he really writes the line of how to tell this kind of story and like make something quite thorny, but also really interesting to think about. Yeah, so it was kind of an interesting reassessment of Kubrick. Still don't really know where I stand. I think I still would say as an individual, like prefer something a bit more direct emotionally sometimes, rather than his style is kind of almost detached, you could say. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's kind of like a taste preference kind of thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
I think he's so good with the unexplainable. Like, I think my order of viewing would have been Shining in high school on a day when I was homesick and my mom and I watched it together. Which was
wow.
Oh, okay. Interesting parenting.
Your mom. Yeah.
Shout out, Mom. Love you. Yeah. And then like 2001 blew my mind the first week of freshman year.
Was that freshman high school, freshman college?
College.
Okay.
Being the, to borrow Ben's language, young cinephile at that point. And then Eyes Wide Shut. And I know I'm forgetting some others, but I also feel like I'm not as widely viewed as I could be on Kubrick. I admire him. I don't feel a deep emotional connection, but I'm very skeptical when people say he's cold and distanced. I think he's deeply, deeply terrified in a way that I find kind of interesting to watch, in a way that's not dissimilar to Ari Aster's apparent all-around terror.
Yeah, I wonder, Ari Aster is probably a Kubrick fan.
He's got to be, right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. I need to watch a little bit more probably to really form an opinion, but seeing his fingerprints on AI is fascinating. And that it makes total sense that Spielberg kept that ending from Kubrick.
Yeah. Can I give a spoiler for Barry Lyndon? The very last, like, Wilson, will you be mad if I...
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'll live.
I love how that film kind of ends with, okay, you've watched this entire movie now. The way I'd summarize that ending is he kind of throws up, it's either a voiceover or a title that basically says, like, well, everyone that you just watched is dead now. That happened a long time ago. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, he makes the intent... It's very intentionally like, well, everything you just watched, everyone here is dead now. And that kind of a coda is somehow fitting with AI, I feel. Like there's that sort of space in which you have to wrestle with like life after, or the perception of everything after all of that has ended.
But I think whereas Kubrick would do like everyone's dead now and it doesn't really matter and the way of the world is indifference, Spielberg makes it feel like everyone's dead now and oh my God, this is the most horrifying concept that you could sit with at the end of this movie.
I feel like the Kubrick perspective is a bit more abrasive, whereas like the Spielberg is kind of like, everyone matters and like everyone should be important. Like something like that kind of feeling that's more rousing, a bit more like, I guess the word's optimistic maybe. Rather than like, oh yeah, nothing really matters. We're all gonna die. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because Spielberg's like such a humanist.
Yes,
and then
exactly.
It's interesting to have a film in which the main characters are really not human beings.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then it's a very human emotion that's driving this boy. And I guess we could argue whether or not it really is love, but it seems like, I feel like Spielberg believes it is within the film. And he's showing this journey with this idea of love kind of guiding non-humans. So Spielberg still has his Spielberg things, but it makes it so disturbing because it's not a human being.
Yeah, I don't think it would work as well if Spielberg did not believe that it was love. Like, I think you need a filmmaker, even though in truth, it is not real love. But when you have the director, like, believing that it is, like, I think it really comes across as such a moving experience to just go through this journey with David. So, Isaac, do you want to start by talking about what you feel like this sort of push-pull between Kubrick and Spielberg is happening here and like what the result of it is?
Yeah, I remember hearing an interview of Spielberg's where he said that a lot of times people mistake the elements of his that were from him and the elements of Kubrick that he retained. Like people tended to flip-flop those within this film. And I've kind of wondered if the film was for him an excuse or a way to wrestle with some of his own things that buck against his own beliefs and his own tendencies within filmmaking. It kind of gave him permission to do things in a more disturbing way, which I really like. So I don't know if this answers the question or not, but I personally find that the choices he's making, I feel like they must be intentional, that he is offering a vision that's a little bit more disturbing. Because I feel like maybe he himself was wrestling with those things as he was making the film. One specific scene that stands out to me is when David this is also a spoiler, but he goes to Manhattan and he finds the place where he was created, and he finds all those versions of himself, and then he sees himself on a couch or wherever on a chair, and then he ends up ripping this boy apart because he cannot fathom that there'd be anyone else other than him to be able to love Monica, to love his mom.
Yeah.
And it's such a disturbing scene and even a disturbing rendition of love, you know. And there's no way that Spielberg is doing that without knowing that it's a disturbing reflection of love. Like, I think he intentionally knows what the audience will find aspirational or sympathetic. Like, he's a master of that. So I think he deeply knows what he's doing there. And that, to me, I've wondered if that was a Spielberg moment that maybe Kubrick didn't have, just because he's mentioned that. Because it's such a striking moment. I don't know. Yeah, what do you guys think of that scene? Or
Yeah, I think one of the key lines for me in the film is early on when the father is like, if the boy can love, it means it can hate. And that's a very bleak kind of point of view on life. But I also personally really agree because like many things have a yin and yang kind of like situation going on. Love can only exist because you can hate, actually. You can flip it around, but it means that to have the other means you need the other as well. And that, to me, maybe feels like a very Kubrickian thing. But then I was thinking about Spielberg films, right? The classics. And I think a lot of them are kind of about loving something that can kill you, literally kill you, like loving shark hunting or loving dinosaurs, right? Like, this sounds very like funny, but like in a way, it's like people who have like hobbies or like interests that are like putting them in the brink. You know, even Indiana Jones is like, oh, I love history, but it's gonna melt my face off.
Or even more figuratively, like that goes through the Fablemans. He really questions, like, what if this filmmaking thing is noxious?
Yeah,
that's
so
true.
maybe like the idea that, yeah, he is a humanist, but I think he knows about like kind of the dark side of things, right? The dark side of the things that we love. And maybe we don't give him enough credit for them because usually he ends these films where he makes you feel good. But they feel good because he shows you the darkness on the other side. He shows you the danger. Maybe sometimes, I would say I am sometimes a bit blind to the fact that Spielberg is doing that because he leaves me feeling good at the end and I forget about it.
Yeah, that scene was super shocking to me. Even after like having him just like do the other acts in the film, like drowning Martin and like just doing the hair cutting stuff, because those things, like I feel like I understand that it might have been like out of his control. Maybe like the drowning thing is like a programming error or something. But whereas this like felt very intentional from David's part, and I totally understand the reasoning. Like if you were, because I always like think about David and like what is the human reasoning behind this, but also like what is like the computer reasoning behind like why he's making this decision. And I think it's like super valid, right? Like he's programmed to love this woman, and if there's something that comes in the way of him loving Monica, like he wants to get rid of it or like sort of find a way through. But I think that's a moment where sort of like rage, or like the emotion of rage takes over as well, which is also like crazy to think about because, yeah, showing emotions as a robot, like where does that come from? What's the heart of that? Like, is there a soul? The more that I think about that scene, the murkier or like the more complicated it gets for me. So I think it was just like a really just specific action that was 100% an intentional choice by Spielberg to include in this, and just makes me like think about, I guess, yeah, being alive.
Am I the only one who was like, yeah, go David, like get him? Because I think that the great strength of this movie is exactly what you said, Isaac, that Spielberg knows precisely how to play with your sympathy and intellectually let you know and remind you that this is not a human, but still really turn the screws. The scene where Monica abandons him in the woods is awful. Awful. Parentheses, complimentary. I mean that as a compliment. And he's been through so much at this point, and the fact even that his companion is this gross erotic robot, Jude Law, we got to talk about at some point. He's been through all these things that you wouldn't wish onto a child. And Hayley Joel Osment anchors that so effectively while being both sympathetic and robotic. So to see him do this unpredictable thing and embody an extreme emotional spike, a destructive emotional spike too, it does feel like a new thing. And I think what's even more important, perhaps, is him being met by his creator directly afterwards. And you're instantly reminded that it's not necessarily an emotional reaction that is entirely the fault of the child or the robot, but he has been made this way. And it just makes me think that Spielberg's thing with this movie is that any bad thing that happens is out of an act of quote unquote love, which I think really in the adults in this movie is a very self-serving thing. The fact that David was made is to cover for his creator's loss of a child. The fact that he gets imprinted onto Monica is to cover for the loss of Martin until he returns. So the fruits that bears and like what comes about at the very end because that way he's been programmed to feel, that's the really horrifying thing. And this is like the first little glimpse of what's gonna feel so bad by the end of this movie.
I love that because it is like a flawed human moment that he has. And then, like you say, he meets the creator after that. When you said that, it made me think about the scene where he goes into the water and then he's carried to Coney Island magically from Manhattan. And it looks like these fish are, the fish are doing it. That always was like, is that meant to be the creator in a way as well? Like, is there, theologically speaking, is Spielberg saying something about, trying to make us think about that as well, like our idea of a creator? Because in that sense, that feels like a moment that is intentional too. Like, how in the world is that happening? I don't know if you've been to New York, how far Manhattan is from Coney Island as well. Like, this guy's being carried pretty far, but
these fish are doing a lot.
These fish are doing the most.
Yeah, I think carrying on from what you're saying, Eli, like the idea that David as a robot, the only thing different about him from any other robot is that he can love. And I think maybe that is almost an argument saying that the capacity for love and thus hate is the one human thing about humans. Because if you think about the characterization of any other robots, the only thing they do that doesn't feel like programming is self-preservation. And that is also programming, right? But if you think about the flesh fair, those robots are protesting, but they're quite placid and easy to kind of do this thing in which they will end up dying. Like, they don't kind of fight what's going to happen to them.
They just turn off their pain receptors.
Yeah, it's like the 3 laws of robotics kind of thing. Like, it feels like, oh, they will listen to humans as long as the humans demand that they do. And so the only difference about David is that because he has one goal, which is to be with Monica and to love Monica, that he ends up doing things that counter his programming, which is the thing that really impresses his own creators. Like, oh, you're able to do all these things because the capacity of love means that you start having your own goals that go against programming. So maybe now is a good time to rave on this Hayley Joel Osment performance, which is ridiculous, especially once Martin comes in the picture and you see the difference between the way the kids act in terms of like the way that they are. And you're like, oh yeah, Joel Osment is doing something very different from a normal child. Like that, Martin's a little shithead,
but an understandable shithead.
Yeah, and then David's like a robot. He really is a robot. And I do buy that. And yet it's like, you look at him, you're like, yeah, but he looks like a boy, because I mean, he is a boy, but there is that tension when you're watching, you're like, what is happening here?
Yeah, being able to like control your body like at such a young age and just like deliver a very tuned in physical performance is so rare, because I feel like when you're working with kids, I don't know if you, because you have experience working with kids, Isaac, like in Minari, but like I feel like a lot of it is like, oh, try to like do this very naturally, like, or like do it like how you would do it as a kid. Whereas what Hayley Joel Osment is doing here is like super specific and like super like down to like small movements as well, and like that's crazy. Like I don't know what you have to like say about that.
The forest scene when she's leaving him in the woods, that performance is insane too, when he's begging her not to leave him. That's reaching a level in which he's really living it out and playing it out. There's nothing like technical about that where he's just been told what to do. And I've saw a clip of Spielberg directing E.T., the Elliot's performance when Elliot is, I think when he's crying over E.T. And I remember that scene was very powerful. Like emotionally speaking, he does that scene very well. So credit to Spielberg with those scenes, directing kids in a way that it's not just technically blocking them, but really helping them achieve that emotion. That's not easy. And I don't remember how old Hayley Joel Osment was. Do you guys have that on hand?
Yeah, we were looking at the dates trying to figure that out before you hopped on.
Like 11, 12?
Okay, at that age, it's a little bit easier, I would say. Like I just did a show called Skeleton Crew for Lucasfilm, in which the actors were around 12 years old. And emotionally, they were easier to talk to. Younger than that, like it's funny when you hit like Alan Kim, who was David in Minari, he was like 7 or 8 when I did that. But his older sister in the film, she was 11. So you end up having to talk to them differently.
Yeah.
Like the younger they are, the more it is about like, now look over there, stop, and now stop looking at the camera. You know, you're just doing stuff like that. But the older they get, you're starting to reason with them more. But at that age, like Martin, and I'm not knocking Martin in case he ever listens to this because he's listening to every AI podcast out there.
Yeah.
He's just not at that level that Hayley Joel Osment is at being able to translate an emotion. I'd say Martin is doing what you would normally find with kids who are talented at that age. But Hayley Joel Osment, I mean, he's like the Daniel Day-Lewis of kids, I gotta say.
I think it's to the movie's benefit that Martin is not quite up to that level. He has a rough around the edges kind of quality to his acting that makes him weirdly less and more believable.
Yeah. It works. It works in the film.
I think what makes that forest scene really feel even more significant from an acting perspective is that not only is he doing a very emotional scene, he's doing a very emotional scene through the filter of the fact that he's still a robot. And I think Joel Osment does something with the way he speaks. There's something monotonous and repetitive about his tone of voice, you know? And even when it's being emotional, it's kind of like he talks like this, and then he talks like this, and then he talks like this. And there's something not quite human about it. And to have that level of understanding of what you're trying to deliver, and I guess knowing what you want from the end result of acting is like pretty difficult for even adult actors to do. So like for him to do that as a 12-year-old is really, really quite incredible, I think.
Yeah, just nuts. My assistant director on Twisters was the second assistant director on AI. So I've been able to talk to him because he got to work a lot with Hayley Joel Osment. And he said the kid was just magical. Like he was so locked in. He was very professional. And he just seemed a lot older and wiser in his age. So once in a while, there's just a gifted person who comes along like this who, clearly he was being cast in a lot of stuff during that time. And it's just because there was no one like him.
Jacob Tremblay of his moment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So can I ask, in working on Minari, what were those strategies that you used to talk to the older sister? Like, do you have a particular moment where you felt that emotional click with the young actress there and you were able to maybe help her bring something out of her performance that she felt worked for the character?
Yeah, I was always very proud of the way that she handled the scene where grandmother wakes up and she's had a stroke. Spoiler alert. And that happens, I guess it's around the midpoint, a little after the midpoint. And I knew that we needed her to come in and the look on her face needed to tell us that something really out of the ordinary and wrong has happened. So we just talked about what she's seeing, that this is clearly unsettling and clearly wrong. And she just prepped a little bit with it on her own and came in and did it. If I remember, she did it in like 2 takes. It was pretty good. Like, I think the first time she did it, it was like solid. And she was just like that. She was really a great kid. And she had a number of other scenes where I just felt like I could just talk to her about what it is, what the scene is. And girls tend to be emotionally more mature at that age.
As a teacher of 6th graders,
oh yeah,
can confirm.
Yeah. Like you could tell them the situation and the emotions, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I know what that is." But with boys, sometimes it's a little harder. I worked with this actor named Ravi Conyers for Skeleton Crew, and he's going to be in Jon Favreau's new film or TV series as well called Oswald the Rabbit, and that was just announced. But I think he was 12 when we were doing Skeleton Crew. And I had a scene with him, and this is all kind of circling back with Jude Law. Jude and him were working together in a scene, and Ravi was incredible, in which I told him the emotions and all that, and we set things up, and he just delivered. And then he told me later, like, he felt emotionally that he went there to such an extent, like he had to be emotionally disturbed, that he needed a break, just for a moment to get himself together. So that's a cautionary tale where it's not that girls are always more mature and more attuned. I don't want to just say that that's always the case, because he's also a pretty gifted actor, I'd say. But yeah, I worked with Jude, and Jude was I would talk to him about AI. I'm like the AI nut. Like there was
every chance you get.
I'm on a crusade here. So there's a concept artist on Skeleton Crew as well. He was a concept artist on AI.
Oh.
And he had designed the shot with concept art, the moment where Hayley Joel Osment steps up to his own David prototypes that are being made, and he steps up in the eye holes, like his eyes go right up to the eye holes.
Oh. Yes.
Yeah, so he came up with that drawing, and Spielberg liked it so much he put it in the film. So that was another, like, I'm slowly in my career trying to collect AI stories.
I can't believe you say you didn't prepare for this podcast. You've been using your entire career to prepare for it. Like picking projects because AI artists are on it.
Exactly.
I mean, we should go there because you did work with Steven Spielberg himself on Twisters. And I was wondering if you had a chance to like chat with him about AI, or if you like had any like questions about the making of the film.
It's so funny because I told him how much I love the film and how much that one is a favorite of mine. But he just quickly wanted to gloss over it because I think he didn't want to get into a situation of like a fanboy making someone feel uncomfortable. So he's like, okay, oh, yeah, let's talk about this cut. He was very nice about it, but so I didn't get a chance to really dig in and talk to him. But one thing that maybe is not out there that I talked to the assistant director about, his name is David Vengus. Vengus told me that Jude Law worked out this entire musical number where he danced, they filmed it and everything, and it just never made the cut. But it's this like musical number. I would love to see that. Like that would be something that I think would be fantastic. But apparently it just never fit within the story, so that it's not in there.
It's like the dance scene that got cut from In the Mood for Love.
You're right.
Should we talk about this Jude Law section? This act 2?
Yes.
Yeah.
Man is off the rails. Again, parentheses, complimentary.
The mirror in the hand moment I always love that. His moments are very disturbing too. Like he witnesses a murder and then he's just like, okay, I'm in trouble. I better go. Yeah.
Like, it's interesting because I feel like Spielberg's films aren't really that like overtly sexual in like a lot of them. They don't really like just talk about sex or get into it in an explicit way. But you have like one of the main characters as like a gigolo, a male sex worker, that you have to contend with this idea. And I think so much of the film is also David getting himself into like weird, like sexual or like semi-sexual situations that he just has no context to. So then he's just like not reacting as a human would. And I just think that's just so weird for Spielberg to do, but still putting this like off taste in your mouth as well when watching it. And I'm sure 100% intentional, but yeah, like I just think it's just so odd, but Jude Law does such a good job at selling how weird it is.
And he must have been quite a sex symbol at that moment in his film career. I think a lot of women really, and men, they really, he was very revered in that sense. Because he does that seduction scene really well where he's kind of putting his customer at ease or his client at ease. You also relate to her in thinking like, okay, yeah, I guess this is a seductive moment.
Yeah. It's actually a really good performance for him because he also does that split between like being robotic and also like being charming at the same time.
Yeah.
Like you can tell he's not human. The way that he moves, like every scene, he really does sell the fact that he's not human.
Yeah. These little dance steps and things that he's doing.
Like the crick, like the one, every time he does it, it really does work. But I do feel that I'm not the biggest fan of this act because it does feel so weird in the context of the whole film. I think the Fleshfare stuff is also like very cartoony. Like I think that's why it feels a bit strange to me because depictions of sex work, we have murder, and then we have this thing where we're essentially killing robots, but killing them for sport and for entertainment. And that's all sounds very bleak, but then it's kind of played out in this kind of fun way, which is a bit strange. And I think the tone of it does not jive well with me. And I think also thinking about Jude Law in the context of Pinocchio, I think he kind of plays a Jiminy Cricket character. Kind of like a jester character, a guy, but also a guy that doesn't really know what he's talking about.
Gigolo does sound like the word Jiminy.
Also, his full name is Joe Gigolo, which is a very funny name.
Or Gigolo Joe.
What do you know?
Gigolo Joe? Yeah, it's just a good rhyme, I guess.
Yeah, I do wonder about the version of this movie that once David is abandoned in the forest, stays entirely in his narrative range, rather than cutting away to Jude Law or Brendan Gleeson or the guy who saves David from the fair, or David's inventor, in a sort of Clara and the Sun-ish, or even like Alfonso Cuarón is coming to mind, kind of way. Like, what would this movie push its idea about love and pain even further if it were totally anchored to David's perspective? What gets lost or gained with that choice?
Yeah. But there's a moment I really like in the Flesh Fair where the audience turns on the whole enterprise and the spectacle because they feel like this boy is real. And even though they are so inhuman in many ways, like it's a moment of humanity. In a weird way, it kind of redeems human beings just for that moment, where it just works on this interesting level I've always felt, where you are kind of glad that they draw the line for once. And it's remarkable that they do as well. You almost expect that it's being set up to be completely anti-humanist in a way. But then there's that human moment.
Right.
And it's a very odd self-reflexive moment, too, because anytime there's an audience in a movie, you're thinking about your relationship to them and your own kind of sympathy for or pity for or, you know, in 2025, hatred of AI, and both wanting David to survive and not, and seeing the crowd react in that way to him. You both are with them and against them in a way, too. It's a really weird mirror that Spielberg holds up in that moment that I like.
Yeah, I guess that's the way I feel throughout the thing, that he just keeps on holding the mirror up.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like when I watch that scene with where the audience turns, I feel like a cynic because it's like I don't buy it. And I think that reflects more on me than the film. I'm just like, really?
That's the mirror. Yeah.
I'm also like, yeah, I'm thinking about like opening up that narrative range during that second section, but I also think that without opening up that narrative range, you won't get all this like incredible world building that is happening outside of David's home that I think really like show to me like a version of like a future city that really is believable, like visually and as an experience watching it, which is crazy to think because this was made in 2001 or before 2001. And the fact that it still holds up today and the future just looks believable and like the design of it and like the tech and just the way the people interact with mechas is also just very well thought out. And just think about how our relationship is with like chatbots today and like AI's prevalence in the world. I think it's just like quite on the money for 20 years ago.
You know, I feel that same way about not to jump ship to a different film, but with Minority Report, yeah, the way that the targeted ads and then also the retinal scans and all this, like that is our present day reality. And I found when that came out, I remember that feeling like that's not familiar, but that's an interesting like exercise in imagining the future. And then it really came true.
There's so much about both those movies that's scarily prescient.
Yeah. Even the precogs, like I feel like that's what AI is going to be able to do, really predicting our behaviors, which is really crazy.
Only thing gets wrong about AI is that the starting is like, oh, climate change, so we're going to do AI now. And it's the opposite.
We're doing AI, so there's going to be worse climate change.
Yeah, you're right.
And I was laughing. I was like, oh, wow, we really got that wrong. Like, I think no one really thought about the connection between those two, like, at all, like computing power and like what it takes to do computing power and how much water it needs to use. I think thinking about its depiction of maybe AI is interesting because of the current age of what we think of AI, because there's a sense that AI is about, right now, I'd say it's like this black box that you can either say it thinks or it hallucinates things that we don't think about. And it creates new things from jamming known human knowledge from the internet or whatever it is, right?
Or the semantic relationship between words, even, or different sets of data.
This depiction of robots and AI is still pretty programmatic. It's like, oh, they're programmed to do this, so they follow the instructions that are baked into their systems, as opposed to developing their own intelligence. Although I would say that then the argument here is that the injection of love into David gives him intelligence, because then he starts creating new connections, which is when he learns about Pinocchio and then fully believes in the power of the blue fairy. So in a way, that human thing is the thing that powers his intelligence. So it's kind of an argument that the intelligence in AI still requires this human touch.
And the starting point somehow is still ego driven, I guess, or for our own vanity or for our own use, that we kind of create something that it's possible that it will outlive us thousands of years into the future, where those things are just studying what we were. It's a disturbing vision, but it's possible.
Should we talk about the ending then?
Yeah.
Let's get into
Yes.
it. Has there been a 2,000 plus year time jump in a film before? I don't know.
A Kubrick film.
Oh, yeah, 2001.
Millions of years.
I walked into that. Whoops, sorry.
Yeah, I forget, what is the time jump? Is it 2,000 years?
Yeah, I think they say 2,000 years. Yeah, it's not a lot of time for an AI, right? For a mecha. And just him like just staring at that blue fairy for thousands of years. And when that narration comes on, I was like, wow, that's too long. That's a long fucking time.
Well, it's so disturbing because, I don't know, I'm going to struggle to verbalize or intellectualize why that ending is so disturbing. And we should be clear for those who haven't seen it that it's David finds his blue fairy, which is a statue at Coney Island underneath the Atlantis-sized New York City. He stays there begging it to turn him into a real boy for 2,000 years, frozen in ice, and then this alien species uncovers him, and he is still insistent on spending one more day with Monica. They can conjure her back using a strand of her DNA, and David has a little bit of her hair, lo and behold. But by bringing her back, they will eliminate her from existence entirely, in perpetuity. She will never have existed after that day that she's back. And David has a very nice day with his mom, and then the movie ends.
Yeah.
Even as you're saying that now, wow, that just sounds so depressing.
It's bonkers. It's so upsetting because it is a reunion that is emotionally real and intellectually fake. And that is precisely what David is.
Mm.
Wait, what do we mean by intellectually fake?
That we know that it is not perfect, that it is not real love, that he only has this space and time with her through a fabricated set of circumstances that will ultimately doom both her to never have existed and him to never feel that love again and never be able to work towards that love ever again. And he still chooses it. And it's very moving and it's very convincing. And it's like everything that's behind that patina of joy is awful to consider.
I think from what you're telling me, I would actually, on the contrary, say that is the most human part of the movie, despite its intellectual fakery and despite the fact that she shouldn't exist for this one day. Because what is life but a temporary moment? And if you ask anybody, like in real person, like if you were to spend one day with the person that you love, would you take it? And then they die, they will say yes. So like whether they exist or not is kind of like immaterial because we all will stop existing. And I think it's like, what is the worth of one day? And I think the worth of one day is a lot for a lot of people, more than what you already got.
But David won't stop existing.
At the end of the film, doesn't he close his eyes? Doesn't he close his eyes and cease to exist? I don't know.
Even so, like, that's irrelevant to the fact he gets one more day. And if you think about couples that like one partner dies much earlier than the other, it's kind of like a similar experience, I would say, you know? And like life is like life until it just becomes memories, until the memories die, then that's it for any of us. And of course, like the character of David and the concept of the science fiction is that it allows you to extrapolate that to a much longer timeline that makes it feel even more futile and make it feel even more pointless. But then I would argue that most of what we do is pretty pointless, but we still do it. You know?
This is like what David's inventor, Dr. Hobby, says about how the most human thing is to work against impossibility.
Also, like, sometimes I've seen it and I felt like it feels like a mini movie. And it makes you reflect on when this movie ends and these characters are no more as well. What you're carrying from that experience of having experienced those emotions of people who don't actually exist and are not real. You know, how that helps you to reflect on love and what one day with somebody means. And I've wondered about that as well. Like, was that intentional? Because it puts me in that space as someone who just loves watching films and loves filmmaking and wants to extrapolate from film some sort of moral meaning and inspiration. That I just wrestle with that as well when I watch the film.
Yeah.
For our like last section, could we maybe talk about a little about like the directorial choices? I remember, Isaac, at the start of our conversation, you were talking specifically about Spielberg's blocking in this film. And the last episode that we did, we talked about Luca Guadagnino's Call Me By Your Name. And I said that the difference between good films and great films is blocking. So I was wondering if you wanted to like choose a specific moment or just talk about the blocking in general in AI and why you think it's so outstanding.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like a specific thing. I know there are just so many. The lecture is very interesting that when we have that lecture with the workers, I find that to be interesting. But the scene that follows it, I find the way that we get all the information of this family in which a child is under care and, you know, Martin is in some kind of stasis. The way that the camera is moving and revealing close-ups, perspective shifts, and things like that. And the way that the doctor brings the father over to the side to talk, and then they shift their position I can't remember exactly, but there's a specific point in the conversation where they shift their positions, and that helps provide a little bit more of an emotion to what is being shared at that moment. I think the doctor is saying that, it's not looking good, and there's like a shift in their positioning. So they're just little things like that I have the cheat code because I've worked with Spielberg when he was with me on the edit for Twisters. I remember there was a moment where he really liked a shot where one of the characters leans in, and I had let that go a little bit longer, but he wanted me to cut it at a certain point because he said that lean in is emotional and you go to the next thing and we know the audience is leaning in too. So like there's just this element that he's really thinking about what the positioning of people means for a scene. And then there are certain shots where he suggested that I push in by like 30%, like blow it up 30%. And then I would do it and it just punches up like the emotion of the scene, just that little bit. Like it's nuts how he thinks in that way. And I don't think he minds me sharing this. Like he said that he learned later in life that he's dyslexic. So he's always wondered why he cannot read books and scripts as fast as other people. But then he just found out that he has dyslexia. But on the other hand, I feel like the flip side of that is that he's quite exceptional in his visual language and understanding. Like, I think he can walk into a room. There was this Scorsese interview where he said that Spielberg can walk into a room and say, this is where the actors will be. I need a 40 millimeter lens. And if we hit this angle, then we can catch, like he's just able to see things in a way that not a lot of people can. I think Like Claire Denis is a master at being very subjective with her camera. She's super subjective in what she's doing, and it can feel like a modernist. She loves Faulkner. It feels like you're watching Faulkner in cinematic form. But Spielberg is so good at figuring out blocking. It's a different skill. Like for her, it's all the camera is painting a scene with the language of the edit and perspective. For him, it's blocking, revealing close-ups at a certain time. It's like a magic trick that he's doing. Look at this hand, and then he's doing this. Like, it's just a different way of working. So there's a very strict style to what he's doing that stems from his strengths. And I think it's also practical. Like, I heard that he went very much over budget before he did Indiana Jones. And I think he really honed in his sense of blocking setups to stay ahead of schedule. I might be speaking out of my butt here. I don't know.
I believe
so,
it.
Yeah, you can.
It's good enough.
Yeah, keep this in or not. It sounds good. You're always constantly trying to meet your day. And I know Spielberg is, he's usually on schedule and under budget. And that's also a reason why that's one of the incredible things about him. But I think like part of it is because visually speaking, he's so good at telling the story economically. So I've also wondered if, I'm going all over the place. Ho Xiaoshen developed his style due to budget. Like he had these long takes because he said, they didn't have a lot of film. So they had to do a lot of these like mise-en-scène shots. And then he used that. He just kept on building on that language to where it became part of his formalism. But I think Spielberg also did that in the Hollywood sense. Like his setups are super efficient. I know a lot of directors are so jealous of that. I speak as one who's so jealous of that talent he has of being able to see like where to place the camera and know how to do a scene incredibly quickly so that you can move on. From his assistant directors, I've heard he does very few takes, one or two or three, and then he'll move on because he just constantly wants to get the next shot. So what he's doing is very economic.
Isaac, do you believe that it's like a talent, or do you feel like it could be like a muscle that like the more films that you make as a director, like the easier it becomes for you to walk into a room and block it out all in your mind?
It's a little bit of both. I think it's a skill that you can learn, but I also think, the first person that comes to mind, this is such a self-deprecating thing, is like, I'm kind of Martin and he's kind of Hayley Joel Osment. Where you can just tell when someone is amazing at something, you know? So I'm going to try my best and work hard. But at the same time, I'm not going to beat myself up if I cannot attain that level to which he's doing it. Because it's a little bit insane if you see what he's doing with the camera and you're just mapping out all of his shots. That's why I know Steven Spielberg is doing this whole Jaws thing where he's breaking down the entire film.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
You just have to admire it. That's all you can do. You just throw your hands up. You're watching LeBron James. You know, you're just seeing it being done at this level. That's insane.
But I think also it's a matter of, and maybe this is speaking more to like general listenership interest in filmmaking, it's a matter of finding the language or mode or medium or style that speaks to your own personal strengths. Like speaking as a teacher, I was so fascinated to hear that Spielberg has dyslexia because I see in students with learning differences that if they get a non-traditional essay assignment to show their knowledge, they can really fly. And like, you know, my students who get a video essay assignment, like sometimes they'll really surprise me and knock it out of the ballpark. And it's a matter of trying out different things and finding what is your own language, a la Spielberg.
I think with Spielberg, the thing that really hits for me is like, it's economical because he knows how to deliver information in the right order at the right time. And I think that really plays out not just within the scene, but within the film. And that's actually all that filmmaking is. It's how do you deliver the information over time and in what order. That's literally all films. And I think because of the scale that he's working at, the blockbusters that he's working at, he has access to many, many tools that like an indie filmmaker might not have access to the same number of tools. But then having more tools isn't necessarily better because now you're like, I have many, many choices. I have to pick just one. An indie filmmaker is like, oh, I only got one camera, I got one lens. I'm just doing this. But then for him, he's like, I could use a crane, I could use a push-in, I could dollies, I got extras, I can do whatever I want, but I still need to decide which is the right one. He could spend all the money in the world and still make the wrong decisions, but he doesn't.
Yeah. Isaac, do you feel like that when you jumped from Minari to Twisters?
Yeah, with Twisters, definitely. It started with Mandalorian first, and then I did an episode of Skeleton Crew. And those sets just run super slowly just because of the number of people, the VFX that are loaded into the volume, the LED screens as you're filming. You just know you have a certain number of setups a day that you can do. Maybe like if you're doing really well, you might get 16 setups in one day. You want to make each one count. You want to make sure that each setup that you do, you're going to hit all the things that you need within a shot. And that includes like getting insert shots. So you do start to see the world through that lens of if I could see the world the way Spielberg does, then it would make things go a lot faster. And then you simply can't do the thing that I used to be able to do in my indie days, where it's more run and gun. Hey, that thing looks incredible over there. Let's whip the camera over there and let's start shooting that thing. In theory, that stuff is wonderful. And I love that stuff because you're really mining the present moment for things. And that's what films should be doing. But the mechanism of a blockbuster is so hard to move that it's like, somebody said it's like moving a aircraft carrier where you have to know where you're going to move it hours in advance. Whereas when you're doing indie, you're basically in a small speedboat and you can go over wherever you want. So it's advantages and disadvantages. The advantages, you can have a crane and it's going to look beautiful. You have the most talented people working for you and all of those things, which I really like because I've gone through the indie route and I've done super art house stuff where it's just my first film. I shot that by myself. I was the DP and I was just running and gunning all the time. And now to just step into a different sort of way of working, it feels like a new, unique challenge that I don't think a lot of people have the chance to do. So I understand that weight of opportunity and responsibility to it. So I quite like working within the field and I want to get better at it. So it's a thing I think about a lot. I still watch Twisters and I'm still like, God, I got to learn more. Like I got to watch more films. And, I still think about that stuff. But there's a lot that you don't realize until you go through it, just how difficult it is to get that machinery working the way that you want it to work. It's kind of bonkers.
Just kind of what Twisters is all about.
Yeah, it's true. It is a freaking tornado.
Did you ever think of yourself having your sights on like going down towards a blockbuster route as a filmmaker? Was that something that like was on your kind of, I don't know, compass?
In the fantasy sense of like, if I could do that, I would do it this way.
Oh, but the fantasy comes true, which is incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible. So when it did happen, I mean, for many years, I just resigned myself to the idea that I'm not going to be a blockbuster filmmaker. I'm going to be doing smaller films. And I was at peace with that the idea that I could just stay on that path. That in itself is such a unique privilege too. But once the blockbuster possibility came up, I did race towards it just because it feels like a different canvas, It's so cool.
He chased Twister.
I chased it, yeah.
He storm chased.
I've always felt like there's an analog, That film felt like what I was pursuing as a chaser. It's kind of funny. And it did bloody me up by the end. Like it.
And now someone's going to be looking at your handprint outside the Kodak Theater.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't know if that's going to be happening. Nice try.
God forbid I bring it full circle.
Sorry, I got to shut you down right there. Sorry,
Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today, Isaac. You can catch his features anywhere that you can find movies. Could you give us like a sneak peek as to like what you're working on right now, or what can we expect from you in the future?
Yeah, I'm in a weird state right now where I have a few things that are kind of simmering, but nothing has started to fully go yet. So, and nothing I can really talk about, sadly. But hopefully I'll be making something soon. My way of bringing this full circle, I just want to say, Martin, wherever you are, if you're listening to this, you did a great job. And
we don't even know his name.
Yeah, I don't even know his name.
I have a cast list. His name is Jake Thomas.
Jake Thomas. Oh, and then another thing I'll say to wrap this up, I did not know until later the coincidence that I named my characters David and Monica. So the mother is named Monica and the son is named David in Minari. And that was a totally subconscious thing that I had done. So that's another thought. And honestly, I'll probably be fanboying about Spielberg out there. And that's where you can find me in the future.
Yeah. If you ever want to come back and talk another Spielberg, we'll be happy to have you.
Or like Claire Denis or Ho Xiao Xian. Those are wild references in this episode.
Those are great. Have you guys covered those?
No.
We have not.
Yeah.
But we were definitely thinking about.
Yeah, they're definitely filmmakers that are within our zone.
Earlier this year, we did like all 7 of Edward Yang's films. So we just did his whole filmography because we could not talk about all of them.
That's a deep cut. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what a cool one would be? You don't have to include this right now in this episode, but Ho Xiaoshen and Claire Denis both did like Ozu-inspired films. It was 35 Shots of Rum and Café Lumière. And I think it was kind of funded or partly sponsored by someone who was intentionally wanting them to riff off of Ozu.
Wow. I guess it was by Shochiku, which is like the production studio that made the Ozu films.
Those are wonderful films to look at in that regard.
But I love 35 Shots of Rum. I think it's one of the most, you were talking about humanist. Like, I think it's like one of the most like inspiring, like human stories like ever put to film. It's just so beautiful.
That's a beautiful one. I love that one. And the music is so good. And
yes. Okay, well, whenever you're free, if you have a project to promote, if you don't have a project to promote, if you want to come on, shoot us an email. We'll be happy to have you.
Yeah.
I got too much to say about movies, I guess.
That's all we need.
Yeah. I thought we weren't going to have anything to talk. Like, I really didn't know if I had anything to say about AI.
You had so much AI knowledge. Like, you had like 5 interviews behind you about AI.
The letters A and I are even in your name.
There you go.
Not that that's that uncommon. I guess it's the same for me.
Yeah.
And Wilson.
Yeah.
And Ben.
And Ben.
They're vowels. What are you talking about?
You need to, you can design a special cover art for this one with that font. And,
Yeah.
but yeah, thank you guys. This was a really cool conversation.
This was very fun.
Yeah. Really fun.
Thank you, Isaac.
And I feel like I learned a lot from you guys' perspective as well. So
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Deep Cut. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts to help others discover the show. A great way to support us is to leave a review for our show or comment on our episodes directly on Spotify. You can keep up with Deep Cut on Instagram, Letterboxd, and X at Deep Cut Pod, or follow our TikTok at DeepCutPod_film. If you want to chat with us and other fans of Deep Cut, come join our Discord server where we talk about movies, TV, music, or share what we've been up to. We also have a Patreon. If you want to support us with a monthly subscription, we deeply appreciate it. Click the link in our description or go to deepcutpod.com to find links to everything we've mentioned here. A special thanks to our Patreon Deep Cut Pick supporter, Leah Lai. Deep Cut is hosted and produced by us, Wilson Lai, Benjamin Yap, and Eli Sands. Our cover art is designed by Justina Yam, and our theme song is composed by the one and only Eli Sands. I'm Wilson.
I'm Ben.
I'm Eli.
And I'm Isaac.
Take care, and we're looking forward to talking about more movies with you next time.